I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to serve as your president for the next 2 years. I'm deeply honored to give back to AG Bell, given the countless gifts that this organization has given to me and to my family. I remember sitting down at my first board meeting at AG Bell, looking around the table at people the likes of Don Goldberg and Carol Flexer, both of whose research and books by then had quite the shrine on my bookshelf at home, wondering how in the world a simple mom like me could add value. They quickly assured me of this value, and immediately I saw the strong commitment that AG Bell has to equipping families on their hearing loss journeys while listening to them about what they need, just as it equips professionals and adults with hearing loss. I have many roles in my professional and personal life. I'm an attorney at a firm in Columbus, Ohio, with a business practice. I actively volunteer in statewide organizations and have served as the immediate past president of Easter Seal Central Ohio, on the parent advisory board of Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, and formerly the Ohio chapter of AG Bell. Go Buckeyes. Most importantly, I serve the roles of being a wife, happy anniversary today to my husband, and being a mother to 4 amazing children. I'd like to tell you about part of this role, which is one of those closest to my heart and has inspired me to this leadership opportunity. My inspiration to leadership, to the association, comes from my 3rd son, Jonah, who many of you may have seen last night tearing up the exhibit hall. When Jonah was born and didn't pass his newborn hearing screen, I began a journey I'd never expected. My initial thoughts as the dust settled and I began to accept the diagnosis were of silence. A world in which Jonah would never hear music, never hear me tell him that I love him, and never hear the whispers of his big brothers. Not knowing of any other option, I went home and I called a school for the deaf. I was told that I could enroll all 3 of my sons in their daycare and that they would be permitted to talk at lunchtime, but otherwise the program was sounds off. I hung up the phone and cried. A couple weeks later, by chance, I received a phone call and someone reached out telling me there was another option, listening in spoken language. I recall being offended and in disbelief, but with this glimmer of hope, we moved forward and Jonah began wearing hearing aids at 1 month of age. Through the following months of what we all know as the booth, I knew that Jonah's hearing aids were not enough to give him access to the sounds that he deserves to hear. I spent nights until 2 a.m. searching for and reading for all the information about hearing loss that I could find. I had Austrian articles downloaded and translated to English. We engaged in genetic testing and read every book on deafness that we could find. We started to learn sign language, knowing that Jonah wasn't hearing us. Then one day, I ran across an organization called AG Bell. I saw that they would be putting on a convention just 3 hours from our home in Pittsburgh in 2006. The kids were packed into the car, and I spent the next 3 days as a sponge, drinking in every word that flowed from the mouths of the professionals that I met, sharing genuine tears and smiles with other moms, sharing therapists and playgroup information, and gaining true hope that my boy would someday hear me sing his lullabies. I overfilled my bags at the exhibit hall while professionals held my baby, like last night, and entertained his 2 toddler brothers so that I could ask question after question of the resourceful exhibitors. I learned at the convention about the possibility of a cochlear implant, and I begged people for contacts of any surgeon in the country who would implant my son, who at the time was thought to just have a 75 decibel loss, which at that time wasn't enough for a cochlear implant. For it was at the convention that I began to question why on earth it would ever be good enough that my child be bumped up into the speech banana, and why the bar of hearing wasn't set much higher than that. After the convention, I demanded additional testing for Jonah, which revealed an actual loss of 110 decibels. But because of the information I'd gained at the convention, the implant process was started the next day. AG Bell had armed me with the information to fight the insurance company to allow Jonah to receive simultaneous bilateral cochlear implants at 11 months of age. AG Bell introduced me to the talented and brilliant professionals who served Jonah and to whom this day I pester with my questions, although they now relate more to football helmets than to the Lynx sounds. A.G. Bell introduced us to an international network of parents and friends with whom we keep in touch today. A.G. Bell's conventions have been the times when Jonah is able to see all those other magical children with the same blinking lights on their heroic ears as he himself has. As the president of A.G. Bell, I hope to give back to those whom have given so selflessly of their time and resources to this organization, which changed the life of my son, and to pay it forward to all the new families and professionals embarking on this journey. Our organization must advance listening and spoken language so that we can achieve the future we desire for our children, families, adults, and the professionals that support them. I'm thrilled that A.G. Bell recently, as part of our strategic plan, bolstered our mission to go beyond advocating to advancing listening and spoken language. Because of my own family's history on this journey, I admittedly have a passionate opinion on listening and spoken language. I confess that I tend to be that mom that when asked whether one ear is enough or whether they should wait on the second and when this should happen, my routine response is 2 ears yesterday. My son's success makes it easy for me to speak to the path we've taken. And when I see him reading years above grade level, and his teacher is here today who taught him to do that, or talking back to me like a typical 8-year-old boy with a perfected tone of mockery, I find it impossible to apologize for my family's view that when possible, children should be given access to sound. To us, spoken language was the goal, but sound itself was a goal just as important. Sound is much more than language. It's the music of Jonah's favorite band, Bon Jovi. Attaboy. It's Jonah hearing his cat purr. It's hearing his basketball coach blow the whistle, hearing an oncoming car, and hearing the ocean waves, which, thanks to all the advances of these CI companies, he now does while in the water, hearing it with his aqua ears. It's my strong belief that when it can be, sound be provided in addition to language, and that families who desire spoken language should have full support of this from day one. Families should be informed not just about options, but about actual outcomes of these options. I believe that listening and spoken language should not be presented merely as the third or fourth in a long line of confusing options. Because of the advocacy of A.G. Bell, I can envision a day when no family has to threaten an insurance company with a lawsuit based on deterioration of auditory nerves, as we did, in order to get 2 cochlear implants instead of 1. Because of A.G. Bell's community of deaf adults, I can envision Jonah as an adult with a warm and supportive group of friends who share many of his life experiences, and I can see that he will grow to thrive and be successful just as they have. Because of the A.G. Bell Academy's credentialing of qualified professionals, I can envision and have seen the day when there are more than 4 listening and spoken language specialists in a state like Ohio, the closest being 2 hours away, as was the case when Jonah was a baby. Because of A.G. Bell's efforts to educate the general public that deaf people can listen and speak, I can envision the day when spoken language isn't the 4th option given to a parent, and when a new family doesn't have to hopefully find out that listening and spoken language is an option they already know. Because of the work of A.G. Bell, I envision the day when it's common knowledge to pediatricians and the general public that if at all possible, sound must be accessed swiftly and to the greatest extent possible, and that time is of the essence. Finally, I can envision the day when that person who previously scolded me in the grocery store for making the choice to implant my son will understand that this choice that I made as a parent to give a cochlear implant to my child is anything but a selfish choice made for myself, but rather a choice made at Jonah's critical early age that it was, in order that Jonah himself later has the choice. The gift of choice is the gift that my son has been given. Like Dawn, I envision this day of no apologizing for or tiptoeing around our desire to advance listening and spoken language, and no more having to justify a mother's desire to have her baby hear her tell him that she loves him. This journey my family has embarked upon with Jonah has been one of the greatest gifts of our lives. I'm excited for the future of A.G. Bell. Of those to whom much has been given, much is expected. A.G. Bell has given my family immeasurable gifts, resources, and support. I'm tremendously grateful and very much looking forward to continuing to contribute to this organization as your president.